So one of the things that was most alarming about Florida in the Revolutionary War period, which alerted the colonists about the need to capture Florida, was that in Florida, former slaves, runaway slaves, were being armed by the British and being integrated into battalions in St. Augustine, and battalions that would protect the colony from Continental Army invasions. Another thing that was happening, and I've written about this extensively in the books I've written, is the arming of Native Americans, the Seminole, and how this was an important part of the Britain's defensive strategy of Florida. Now, there were Native American allies on both sides. We need to stress that. But the arming of African Americans very early in the war by the British in St. Augustine was not something the Continental Army would do until much later in the war, and only in New England. Obviously, they would not do it in the South. And this was one of the things that most alarmed the American colonists about Florida. Now, another thing was the number of Catholics in Florida. This is an underlying theme of the American Revolution we don't hear about, is the anti-Catholicism that guided a lot of our founding fathers in their resentment of Quebec, which I've written about extensively in my book about Canada, and why Canada is not part of the United States, as well as some of the issues here in Florida. So those are themes that you don't hear about in America 250. You don't hear about, first of all, you don't even hear about Florida staying loyal to the crown. East Florida staying loyal. West Florida did too, but West Florida is a different subject. We're dealing with East Florida here primarily. You don't hear about East Florida. And you don't hear about the fact that there weren't 13 colonies, there were 27 British colonies in North America. 13 of them rebelled, 14 of them, which were in many cases lesser populated, let's be fair about it, did not. Now, the richest colonies of all were the West Indian colonies in the Caribbean. And of course, they didn't rebel. And keeping them in the British Empire was the paramount goal and objective of the British in the war once it took the course it did and once the French entered. And of course, in that sense, the British prevailed. They didn't lose any of their Caribbean colonies. And that was the key for them.